Hey guys, welcome back. If you're here for the last episode, you know I'm working on my family room here at home, giving it a little update. And we worked on this shiplap wall. We got the shiplap feature wall up last time. And this time we're working on all the trims and moldings to finish off the room. And the nice thing about trim and molding is the right ones will really give your room that extra wow factor and really make it pop. So we're using some great trim and molding from my friends over at Matree today. We're going to get the baseboard in. We've got some nice 7 1/4 inch really tall baseboards. Going to look really good in here. We're going to get the crown molding up, but first we need to get this door opening here redone. We need to put the casing up, and we're going to be using some architrave at the top, an architrave header that's really going to add a nice touch of class to the room and to the doorway. And you know what? Let me actually show you. Hang on. Let's have a look at this. Okay, so you can see here behind me, here is the entryway to the room that leads out into the hallway. Took all the old casing off. We're going to be redoing it with this new Matree casing and this beautiful piece of architrave here. Actually, super simple way to do your casing around your door frames. I'll show you, but have a look at this. Look at what the old one looked like and what we're going to be replacing it with and what a difference it's going to make. So here we're out in the hallway side of the room, and here, this is the original casing that was on the other side of this entranceway as well. Like I said, I already removed this prior to painting the room and doing the shiplap wall. And now here's the new casing that's going to be going on. This is going to make a huge difference. Look at the difference here if we take it out and compare it. Look at that difference side by side. What a better piece of casing. How much better that's going to look on the wall. We'll have to do this side of the wall another time. And then once we have the casing up, this is going to be our architrave. That's going to be the header at the top. Beautiful piece. So let's get started. Let's get this installed so that we can move on to the baseboards. All right, casings are on, super quick, super easy. Now it's time to cut the architrave header. Now there's 2 ways you can do this. It's really down to your personal preference. You can either have the architrave hang over the casings a little bit on each side, or you can cut it flush so that it's flush with the casings. Again, it's really your personal preference. Now, I'm not sure which one I think is going to look better here, so I'm going to go ahead and cut it so that it'll hang over a little bit. I'm going to have a look at what that's going to look like, and then I'll decide whether I want to install it like that or whether I want to cut it flush. Yeah, that's a good plan. Let's do that. Okay, so we cut it so that we're hanging over by a couple inches on each side of the casing. Let's put it up there, see how that's going to look. I'm going to end up with something like that. Now, I can't really see from here. Tell me, what do you think? Should we cut this or does this look good like this? Come on, make a decision. You know, I'm not going to wait for you. I got it to stay. I'm going to see for myself. think we gotta cut it. See how this looks. Yeah, I definitely like that much better. Just a tiny little overhang, like about 1/4 of an inch on each side. Just going to make sure that they're matched up, and I think we're just going to nail this guy in because it's pretty much perfect. All right, moving on to the baseboard. For the baseboard in here, I'm going with the 7 1/4 inch baseboard from Matrix. This is going to be a huge upgrade from the cheap builder grade baseboard that I had in here before. This is like double the size of that. I think a little bit more actually. So I've already got my first piece cut. I'm ready to put it in. And just a quick little note here before I do. In most cases, you always want to start from a door and work your way around the room. That's the way it's usually recommended to be done. I like to do it a little bit differently. I like to keep my corners that I'm going to have to cope shorter pieces of baseboard. They're just easier to work with, easier to measure, easier to cut. So I don't start from the door necessarily. You can if you want. There's nothing wrong with that. I choose to do it a little bit differently. So I've got my longer piece here that is cut straight at both ends. It'll fit in between the fireplace and the wall. And then I'll just have this small little piece of baseboard here that will have to be coped at the end. It's just much more manageable. So that's the way I'm going to do it. Let's get this piece installed. All right, so that first piece is in. We're going to measure for our small piece here that's going to go between the door and the wall. We are going to have to do some trim here to make it fit around this air vent and cope the edge, but that's not going to be too much trouble. So let's get that going and get it put in place. All right, so we're on to the crown molding. Now, I've never done crown molding before, ever. This is my first time. As you can see, I've got a couple pieces up already, the first 2 pieces. Let's be honest, the reason they're up there is I had to make sure I knew what I was doing before I showed you how to do it. So I watched a bunch of videos. I went out, I made some cuts. They were all wrong, scrapped those, came back in, watched a bunch more videos, talked to a couple friends, went back out, tried again, and you know what? It's not that difficult. It's very intimidating at first, but once you get the hang of it, it's actually really easy. Now, there is a few things you will need here beyond the typical, nail gun and nails and tape measure and that sort of stuff that you use for trim. Very, very handy here. If you don't have one already, you're going to need an angle finder. You can get the fancy digital one. I use the old school one. but it's going to make your life a lot easier because your walls are most of the time not going to be perfectly square. This angle finder is going to help you out big time when you're putting the crown molding up, because you need to keep in mind here you have 2 points of contact, the ceiling and the wall, and the smallest little difference and not being in square is going to make a huge difference and leave you with ugly gaps. So get yourself an angle finder if you don't have one. The other thing I went ahead and did was I cut myself some test pieces, both for, how do these line up? Both for an inside miter and also for an outside miter. This way, as I go around the room, I can check my fit with my little test pieces and not waste a bunch of pieces making cuts that are not fitting properly. And this way, if there is a slightly different angle there that my angle finder finds, I'll know how to make those adjustments to have the smallest gap possible, because we don't want to just go around filling the whole thing with as much caulking as we possibly can. So that's enough talking. Let's actually do some of this together and see how easy it is. It's not that difficult. Don't be intimidated. Let's do it. I'm going to put these down. All right, so let's continue where I left off. I've got this small piece here to do before I do the long run across this long wall here. Now, first things first, because crown molding is quite big and heavy and you're dealing with gravity because it's up high and gravity's wanting to push it down, obviously. It's not like a baseboard. Your best bet is to try and get the crown nailed into as many studs as possible on the length of the run, especially if it's a longer run like this long wall here. So what you'll need is just a regular stud finder, a little bit of painter's tape. Now, I've seen people mark the wall with a pencil. I've seen people do runs of painter's tape right along. I don't like to do that. I just take a little piece of painter's tape and just mark out where each stud is. Nice and easy, nice and quick. You know where your studs are, and your crown molding will be nice and secure. You don't have to worry about it falling on someone's head. So let's get this up there, and then we can move on to cutting and installing the crown. All right, that's it. The Matri makeover of this room is done. We added some 11.5-inch shiplap to create this nice shiplap feature wall, some 7.25-inch baseboard, 5.25-inch crown molding all around the room, and of course that great architrave header that we added to the entryway here. And it's done. It's looking so much better. If you remember what it looked like before we got started, you have to agree that this is so much better than it was. I'll see you next time for the next project. Have a good one.